Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar is presented by Sports Field Management Association. Leading up to SFMA's annual conference, we will be hosting various webinars that preview conference education sessions. The 2023 SFMA conference takes place January 16th to 19th, 2023 in Salt Lake City, Utah. Registration is now open, so make sure to head over to the SFMA website to register for the conference. Our featured speaker today is Keith Fisher, Supervisor of Grounds for Central Regional School District. He will be presenting a preview of his conference education session, Major League Infield Skin Management for High School Sports Fields. Attendees will be muted during the presentation. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature. Please type in your questions and Keith will answer them during the presentation. Thank you for joining us today. We'll go ahead and get started if you're ready, Keith.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm sorry. We were trying to figure out, some of my slides here, and I could see my big screen, but apparently you can see my next animation. So at the conference, hopefully we'll figure it out. But I just want to introduce myself. My name is Keith Fisher. I'm the supervisor of grounds at Central Regional School District here in Bayville, New Jersey. We're about 10 minutes from the Jersey Shore. Well, I live in the Jersey Shore, but 10 minutes from the ocean. A little background, graduated high school in 1997. My brother was a sports field manager down in Vero Beach, Florida for the Vero Beach Dodgers. Atlantic City Surf was a minor league team, independent minor league team in New Jersey, and I started working there when I graduated high school. I started working with him and basically, worked there for 2 years, worked for the Lakewood Blue Claws, which is a single A affiliate of the Phillies back in, from 2001 to 2002, then back down to Atlantic City from 2003 to 2006 as the head groundskeeper. And then, did some commercial landscaping in between. And then for the 2014 season, I worked with the New York Yankees as an assistant groundskeeper. But I was in my 30s, had 2 kids, and so it became increasingly difficult to do that, but it was a dream come true for me to do that. The experience that I got there was second to none. I decided to, come closer to home. I worked for the Toms River Regional School District, specifically at Toms River High School South, where, Todd Frazier played. The winningest coach in New Jersey State baseball history. Ken Frank coaches there, and then went up to Middlesex County Vocational School District, where they really put a lot of emphasis in sports field management, specifically baseball fields, where guys like Ray Sipperly, who's a pretty well-known guy in New Jersey, was a athletic director there, and just they followed through with a bunch of sports field guys. In 2020, my baseball field there at East Brunswick Vocational High School was the SFMA Parks and Rec Baseball Field of the Year. And then Al Leiter donated some money to the Central Regional School District where I went to school, donated to build a brand new baseball field. I think you can see it in my background. That's just a small picture of it. When it was built, it wasn't perfect. They basically, spent a decent amount of money on it, but they didn't, there was no direction. It was built before I got here. So they really, slid on a few things that I had to fix when I got here. We're still working on some things, but one of the main things that I got, fixed right away was the infield skin. And we'll go from there. I've been here for a little over a year now. So Central Regional School District, Major League Infield Skin Management for high school sports fields. So basically, when I interviewed with the New York Yankees, I said, oh, geez, I have sports field management, I have baseball field, experience, but I don't have, major league. And what really rang true to me was what Dan Cunningham said was, the basic principles of groundskeeping is no different from little league to the major leagues. What sets us apart is our attention to detail. And he's right, because from working with the independent minor league team, we had an infield machine and a mower, and that was it. And then I went to Lakewood Blue Claws, where it was a brand new team, and we had a sprayer, we had a vacuum, we had, 3 different types of mowers, we had everything. And then going, to a high school or going to the Yankees, and we had every Toro piece of equipment. Basically, he said, like, if we don't have it, we don't need it, and then when going from a school district in Toms River that was having budgetary problems, where I had, a John Deere mower from the 1970s as my drag machine. So, and using an old aerator, or using an old Ford tractor to roll the infield. If you have a desire and a love of what you want to do, there is things that around you that can get it done. You just have to be willing to put in that little extra effort to get it done. So basically, there's no perfect infield mix. Just because your site might give you different challenges. Most baseball fields, as far as minor league schools, minor league teams, or major league teams, they're wide open. Or you might, different parts of the day might provide certain types of shade or things of that nature. Well, at a high school, we all know that, they might not be in the perfect spot, or a municipal field, they might not be in a perfect spot where, you might see 60% sun all day or 100% sun. So your field's going to dry out that much quicker, or, it's not going to dry out that well. I don't know if anybody you followed, like the John Boy guy on the internet. He did a thing about the weirdest high school baseball fields in the country. And my field at Toms River South was on it. It was like, I think it was the second or third one listed, where there was actually a school in center field. It was ridiculous. But that provided a certain amount of shade at certain parts of the day, or, it had more issues with my grass than it did my dirt. But what I mean is that what someone might consider a perfect infield mix or a great infield mix, it might not necessarily mean your site is perfect for that. And that's what, the main part of this talk is going to be, how to manage your site. If there's 100 people on here, or say 150 people here, we're all going to not have a perfect scenario for our sports field. So you're going to have to take the information that, hey, I have 50% sun, and I know that we have a game at 3:45 or a game at 1. The conditions are going to be different. You might have to manage that, from, let's say, 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. Your field's going to dry out. Or if you got a game at 11 and it's raining at 8 in the morning, well, you know what? Let's just not even attack that field that day. Let's call it a wash, because you might be doing more harm than good. So really understanding your site and your area is going to really kind of, your ability is going to be able to determine what you're going to be able to do. So in the Northeast, in my area, more likely, most infield mixes are sold, or the general recreational mixes are 75% sand, 15% clay, 10% silt, and those numbers will jump. I mean, they will fluctuate. That's not like a percentage. You call a local distributor, and he'll be like, yeah, I can give you that. It's going to be an engineered soil. I know that there's one larger company that's saying engineered soils. Well, most infield mixes are going to be engineered, whether it's you got a clay pile over here and a sand pile over here, and you're just going to mix it, and they're going to test it, and that's what it is. So most common recreational mixes are going to be that kind of ratio. However, you can get a mix that suits your level of maintenance, basically. So if you have the ability to water that field during a day, or or irrigate it somehow, then you can get a higher clay content, lower sand, higher clay. Or if you can't get on it, well, you're going to want that sand clay mixture to be kind of like that, because that's going to give you the water to run through. Problem is, what's the main ingredient in concrete? Well, it's mostly sand and rock, right? So, sand might be loose, and sand might be good to, let the water run through, but it's also could get really, really hard as, concrete. Also, on the other side of it, the higher the clay content, same thing can happen. But if it's wetter, it's gonna be mushier, but it also can get as hard as concrete. So there's that balance there. This is a common thing. I think if you're in the sports field industry, you've seen this, and this is kind of a good, good barometer of what what you're looking at, whether it's a, recreational field, municipal. If you got 75 fields and you're like, I can't get it to be where I want it to be, well, recreational might be what you need. But if you're looking at a high school field, you look at varsity field, then your JV fields, and sub-varsity fields. So that's the way I approach it right now. My JV field is not in great condition whatsoever, but it's safe and it's playable. Where our varsity field is where it gets a lot of the attention. So yeah, that might have the professional, professional infield mix on it. But with that being said, you also need a staff that's willing to pick it up behind you. Where you might have a lacrosse field you might need to maintain, or a other sports field you need to maintain, where it's grass cutting and painting of the lines. If you have a staff that you can trust to do those things, well, that's definitely going to free you up and use that ability to get a professional or intermediate infield mix where it's going to perform a lot better than that recreational sandy mix. Sand is going to drain well, but will tend to be loose. It's important that the sand is balanced out by enough silt and clay. It's recommended that you have an infield that's a balanced silt to clay ratio of 1:1. So basically what that means is you're inherently going to have a higher sand content. That's just what the nature of infield mixes. But you want to have, say, if you're going to have, 20% clay, you might want that 10-15% of silt to kind of to kind of bind all that together. If it's lower, it's not going to be binded together. So say if you have 20% clay and you only have 5% silt, well, it's really not going to bind together. It's really going to be loose no matter how much clay you have in there. Higher clay content will give you a better playing surface, but it needs the highest level of maintenance. And that's meaning, conditioners, water consistently. But it's going to give you that desired cork look where you get that cleat in, cleat out, playability. And that's really what you're looking for. You want soft but firm, if that makes sense, it's soft but firm. Higher sand content is easier to maintain, but it can become dusty and have small pebbles. Small pebbles, will have an effect on playability. And dusty, if any of you guys have worked in a municipality or a high school, and you got, local tournaments, youth tournaments, by the second or third game, you don't even want to be on that machine because you got glasses and the dust is on your face. It's just annoying. But again, if that's what your site and that's all you're able to maintain, well, that's what you can have. Most recreational fields should use a higher sand content. Professional college and some high schools will use a lower sand content with more clay in the mix. So this is Toms River South. This is an infield mix that was probably about 30 years old, because when I got to the school, we had to go down. We probably took about 25 to 30 tons off the field, right? So because the lips were bad. But as you can tell, there is pebbles on there, but it's level. It's going to be, there's some conditioner on there, but if we weren't going to do a total renovation, you make do with what you got, right? You make sure you communicate. This is the Middlesex County East Brunswick school. This had a better infield mix on it with a little bit more conditioner, but again, it's maintained. It's this is after a couple of days after rain. You can tell I just got done cutting it because you can see the mower marks. But again, it's dragged. It's a really important thing after every use is drag the infield, because it'll help fill in some holes. And if you have a rogue rain shower, it's going to it's going to find the holes. You might find those areas at second, and a rain shower will help you determine some things. But again, this is just showing you different infield mixes. The previous one, you're looking at probably $30, $40 a ton. This one's probably in the neighborhood of $100, $120 a ton. This one is definitely in the 100. This is Central Regional. This is in the spring, I believe, or no, because there's leaves on the trees. So no, so this is the fall of 2021 before I did an infield renovation. So this is the infield mix that they put on the field before I got there. And this is a very, very silty mix. It came from Pennsylvania, very, very silty. So I had to incorporate a little bit more clay to kind of get what I needed. And then this is that infield mix in Middlesex County after, after a rainstorm. You can see the drag marks in it. Again, conditioners. I'm a very big proponent of the infield conditioners. They're going to save you a lot of time. This is Atlantic City Surf. This is back in 2005. Again, this is infield mix that was, you can tell by the clarity of the picture. You can see what we had to deal with. I'm sorry, I'm just reading the Q&A. So let me just get through these couple of pictures here, and I'll answer some of the questions in the Q&A. So you can tell this was an interesting weather system here because I was about less than a mile from the ocean. Beyond those casinos there's the ocean. The wind would blow into the left, and it would constantly blow into the left. So it would consistently dry out my field no matter what I did. If I watered it 15 times in a day, it would always water it. It would always dry it out. So I always had to be on top of that. But this infield mix, again, $40 a ton, $50 a ton. So very, very sandy and things of that nature. But again, when you go back and look, it had that same color at the end of the day when you add those conditioners or it's level. So let me just answer these two questions. So I'd like to be able to refer to this chart in future. It's this is for Erica. Yeah, the chart, you can look it up. Just just put infield mix. I'm not supposed to use sports field, the product names. But if you search, expensive infield mix or major league infield mix, that may come up, so if not, I'll have my contact information at the end of this and I'll point you in the right direction. Would you recommend using AgriLime as a sub base, then top trace? I have never used AgriLime. I'm not even really familiar with it. Usually on a professional field, honestly, when I was with the Yankees, we had a sub base. I mean, our infield mix was about 12 inches, and then we had crushed stone underneath it. And the only reason we know that is because when I left, right before I left, we transitioned the field into a football field, and we had to dig it all the way down to the bottom and fill it up with sand. Top dressing it with infield mix. Anytime you do an infield mix, renovation, you're going to want to rototill. You're going to want to do wet to wet. You never want to do dry to dry because it's never going to adhere. So, use Mother Nature as much as you can. If you know that you're close to a sports field renovation, other parts of the country in the Northeast, we have, until November, until it gets really, really cold. And then you're going to get that freeze and thaw. So where it freezes and thaws and freezes and thaws and it starts, layers up. So what you want to do is, if you get a really dewy morning or wet morning, if you don't have if you have no way to get to water it, use a wet morning or a day after rain and just rototill it, add rototill, and then smooth it out with a drag mat or a float, things of that nature. Have I ever used the red shale? I have up in Northeast, but it's not. It holds moisture. It holds moisture to no end. So what you want to try to do is with infield conditioners, and there's infield conditioners, and there's a new one. I forget exactly the name that some major league teams are using it because it holds the moisture longer and releases it slower. Where infield conditioners get the moisture and they release it faster. So it's not, for me at my level, the shale is not perfect because most major league games or infield more minor league teams, they have 6:45, 7 o'clock starts. So if they have any rain or they can control the moisture, they're going to tarp the field. where, at the high school level municipalities, you're never going to tarp your field. So if that holds the moisture for longer, it's not really going to benefit us. But it's expanded shale, I think, is something that people on the higher end places are using. It's not, for me, municipalities, high school levels, I don't think it's going to work very well in the long run. Let me get back to here. I don't want to use up too much of everybody's time. Again, your ability to maintain the infield mix will determine your selection. Do you have access to water? Do you have access to water? What resources do you have? What are your maintenance practices? If you have, multiple sports fields or multiple baseball fields in a big town, you're not going to be able to drag it and see it every day. So you want to take your, your most high profile field where, say, maybe the mayor's son is playing on it, or the mayor's daughter is playing on the softball field, or a committee members. Well, you might want to pay some special attention to those fields. It's a shame to say you want all sports fields to play the same, but if you're not, if you don't have the ability to do that, you want to kind of get one to look really, really nice and show them, hey, with the right resources, we can really make these fields play a lot better and be a lot safer. Safe sports fields is your key word. Hey, I want to make these fields safe. I want to make these fields safe, because nobody can argue with the safe side. Nobody can argue with that. Do you use infield conditioners? For me, infield conditioners, no matter what the product is, they're all pretty much similar. That's something that you should really be thinking about using. It does get expensive, I will say that, but if you have one field, you get, one pallet, put it on that field, and you'll see a night and day difference as far as, rainouts, playability. You really, your infield mixes should be firm but soft, and that conditioner up top is what they should be playing in, what they should be, the ball should be hitting on. If you don't have the ability to get multiple amounts of infield conditioners, a pallet, well then, get two. Put one on the beginning of the season, and then slowly drag. As you drag the field, as stuff gets brought into the edges, you add as needed. That's, as you can tell, this was after the season at Middlesex County before I got to the place I'm at now. You can see that I got some weeding to do on the infield, but that's one of the fall projects. See, when I keep on saying fall, is I know that you guys are all over the country. So, I have a fall. My fall starts about from September till October, November, where you guys might be playing year round, where you might need to shut down a field, or, if you're constantly using it and dragging it, you won't see those, those weeds starting to push through. But it's an infield machine. Very, very useful. That's one of my helpers. I had to recruit my son to get on a machine, get some proper work done. Top dresser. I was lucky enough to get one this year. Any top dresser will work. As you add your infill mix, it'll add it. This one's not very big, but this will add it evenly. And you could do your conditioners with this, your infield mixes, your warning track mixes, your sand. It's a multiple use thing. So when you go to purchase it and like, I don't want to spend a lot of money. Well, you can add a lot of stuff very evenly with this machine, and all it needs is a battery. You need to just put a battery on a machine. It can be towed behind a golf cart for that matter, or even a rake. This is with a lot of conditioners on, a lot of conditioner on top, but a very moist underneath, and that's part of, you want to break it up, open it up a little bit. So let me look at these questions real quick. We have 17 fields. So I would try to level out the shale with the sand, because again, the water is going to kind of help filter that through. I mean, you think about it, you go to the beach, you walk on a beach, the water comes up and it always soaks through. So it's going to help you, filter that sand through. Unfortunately, the shale is going to hold that moisture, but if you can mix it through, I think you're going to get a better result as far as helping out distribute that sand, that water evenly. What are the experts saying about carcinogenic forever chemicals and synthetic turf? I have synthetic turf. I only have a football field. I don't really promote infield, synthetics for an infield or for school. But they're going to use crumb rubber. I mean, Rutgers University uses has unfortunately, they have one of the best turf programs around, and they use an artificial turf, baseball and softball field, and they use cork as their infield filler, not rubber, not sand. So, there's not, look, there's going to be inherent dangers with anything we do. But as far as that is concerned, synthetic turf, if you got to manage it, usually a subcontractor is going to do it, and they're going to have a machine that's going to distribute it, and then UV light it and deal with it that way. But right now, they're saying it's not. It depends on who you listen to. Some people say it's not safe. Some people it's safe. There's no results to it. So it's one of those things where if you're talking about a sports field, synthetic turf is a tool, not the end all be all. So is the new ABI Force machine the new gold standard in infield groomer? I don't use it. It's pretty good, but if you can get your hands on a machine that can drag a nail board and a float and a drag, well, if you got 17 fields, well, guess what? An ABI Force groomer is going to be great, and you might be able to use it and quickly, but you don't need that. You don't need a groomer to get the job that you want done. I didn't have a groomer in Toms River. I didn't have a really good groomer in Atlantic City. But you have, if you have a groomer, it's going to save some time, and you could really promote and push to your purchasing agent for that. But I don't know if it's the gold standard. Other companies have come up with something that's similar. They have other companies that that have infield machines that can open it up and drag as well. So if you have something that you prefer, you go to a trade show, try them all out, and whatever you use. They're all going to pretty much be the same. At the end of the result, you want your field level, you want your field to play safe, and they're all going to get you there, somehow. Moisture management. Moisture management is definitely the key to any sports field practice. Oh, I kind of ahead of myself. Is the most important practice on a sports field, especially infield skins. Whether it's irrigation, whether it's fertilization and watering it in, rain, however you moisture management on any field, sports field, baseball field, softball field, lacrosse, soccer, how you water it, how you rain it, the drain, all that stuff comes in key. This is that same fall with some conditioners at the top. You see some rocks there at the bottom. Now again, we had our infield sprinklers installed, but lo and behold, I did not know that our irrigation system was installed improperly, and I'm still dealing with issues regarding that. So on a windy day, the infield sprinklers do not reach and cover everything. Same thing on this day. As you can tell, I need to edge my field. I needed to edge my field that day, but this was a very windy day. This is a very helpful tool. It's a very helpful tool to manage your moisture. Not everybody has it. I'm very aware of that. So one of the things I used to do in Toms River, we didn't have this, is I used to take the quick connect behind the mound, and then I would cut the outfield and put a sprinkler setup, and then moved it as I would cut the outfield. And as it would get really, really wet, I would stop, run, change it. So my desire to make sure that I had the proper moisture, I spent the time to go do it, or had somebody, one of the players, hey, come out, before practice and help me with this. I have a quick connect, so I'm able to water like this. So this is, after this is the spring of this year. So I have the more expensive infield mix on here. It's dragged, it's leveled. I'm able to water it. Again, I know I'm very lucky in that aspect where I have, I do have a 96-acre site, and I have multiple athletic fields and multiple baseball fields. And I promise you, our softball field looks very, very similar to this. Again, Middlesex County, you know, this is where perfect moisture comes in. This is where you would want to attack the moisture that day and level it off if you have a low spot. I have a low spot at first base there. So this is where I'd want to attack that and definitely, you know, get on it. And if I have any inconsistencies on the infield, this is where I would drag it, you know, and open it up. Again, what happens when you don't follow proper infield skin practices? That, you know, where you have the radar, where you look at the radar where I have, you know, one part of the storm is going south, one part of the storm is going north. You don't know where the heck you are. And I'm up in this Toms River area up there. And you don't drag, or that's, you know, after a tournament, long tournament, you didn't, you know, stay to drag, or you didn't get there in the morning. Well, this is, you know, what's going to happen. It's going to tell you where your low spots are at and things of that nature. Again, this was me after opening up our field, dragging it, rolling it, kind of seeing, you know, where my low areas were, you know, getting a really good rain. This gave me a great opportunity to know where I needed to work the dirt. You know, and I'll go through this quickly. I know it's only supposed to be a 25-minute or so, you know, webinar. You know, take pictures, paint around puddles, you know, so you know where the low spots are. If you can't get to it that day, well, paint around the puddle so you know how big it was. On a wet morning, no standing water, open them up with a rake or a machine. You know, while it's wet, add infill mix. Not when it's soaked, when it has puddles like that, but when it's wet, you know, add it, you know, add some infill mix. Mix them by hand or machine and rolling it. Again, that's preseason, you know, back in early 2019 or 2020, I'm sorry. You know, that's the softball field of that same of Middlesex County. You know, this is Toms River. You know, again, what I'm trying to get you to notice is that there's 3-4 different infill mixes on here of all different varying in prices and, you know, purchasing power, and they all getting them to perform the same. Again, preseason at the last freeze, open up the field dirt, use a box nail, you know, playing surface, hand rake to grass edges, because you don't ever want to work, you know, machine work the edges, because your edges, your transition is very, very important. Roll with a tractor, something with a weight evenly distributed. If you work for a town, I'm sure they have a roller. If you don't have a roller, use a tractor. Use something that's, I mean, I've even used a truck before. I brought out my car to roll my infield. Again, it's your desire to do a good job is going to determine how well your site looks. Again, this is what I had a rototiller. I had not a rotodarian. I had a rototiller on the back of a Kubota machine. There's a rototiller doing, you know, the infield edges. Nail board, you know, in Toms River. Again, very, very, very wet morning. I walked this, and the only reason I showed this picture and I showed in my design and my speech is because if you're held up for time, this area behind second base is not really used that much, because if the ball gets up the middle, guess what? No player is going to get it. So if you need to save some time, you know, I'm never telling you to ignore your site, but if you need to get a game in on a certain specific field and you need to level it off and dry it off and you're killing yourself, well, you can ignore that side, that part. This is, you know, before a game in the spring. Again, you know, infield conditioners, you know, mixes, dragging, that's a constant drag, you know, drag in, circle it, every morning. This was an early morning moisture after a game, you know, after a game the night before. And it just, this was an October morning. This was the perfect amount of moisture that morning. So I was able to open it up. This was me being able to float it. This is spring back in 2015, because you could tell by the pear trees, you know, and this is me, you know, floating it, leveling it off after drying out. Communication with people who use the field, people who own the field, meaning township, you know, recreation, you know, schools, you know, those people who you got to buy from, you know, and people who know more. So by you guys being on this webinar, it shows that you want to learn more. I don't pretend to know everything, but I have, you know, over 20 years of experience in sports field management, specifically baseball fields. And I did not become a better groundskeeper until I went to the high school level. Those guys had taught me, you know, some of the tricks of the trade, you know, for other sports field. And when I did that, it helped me become a better groundskeeper, because I was able to use those tricks to do the other sports fields at a better pace and concentrate on the baseball field. So, but by being on this webinar, it's a great step. SFMA has a great amount of people that they have major league guys, minor league guys that that are specific to your part of the country that might be able to help you with knowing what's out there purchasing wise out there. Just real quick, watch the weather daily. Every day. The weather's going to determine what you're going to be able to do, how quickly you're going to get out there and drag, or if you're going to be able to enjoy that cup of coffee in the morning. Open up and float the field once a week if you can. Drag the field every day. If you can water heavily during the day or the night before a game, because that's where a lot of your moisture is going to be held. Add conditioner as needed, and this is important. Cut the grass, then work the dirt. If you go and drag the field and do all that work to the field, and then you cut the grass, well, guess what? You're going to have a ton of turnaround marks on that field, and it's going to be annoying, to be honest with you. So again, just quick through, that's a good day of moisture. Again, that's Tom's River, $30 a ton mix. It doesn't have to be that expensive. There's that cleat in, cleat out, desirability. Middlesex County, again, more on the expensive side mix, but again, it's dragged. We got some good rain, no puddles. That's that where I told you to, drive, cut the grass, then drag. That's what I'm talking about, trying to get that checkerboard design, things of that nature. Again, these next pictures are proof. When I got to Tom's River, see, I have about 25 tons of infield mix right there. Well, there's the Yankee Stadium when we were taking down. I mean, look at that. We're taking that all the way down. We had to take that all the way down because a couple of years prior, when we had the ice hockey, the Ranger game on there, they only went down a little bit, and it damaged some of the soil. And then a couple of years later, we had a football field. We strip it from the second base all the way to home plate. And when we only went down a few feet or a few inches to level up with the sand, the field, it rained, it froze, and the field got completely slick because it had nowhere to go. So that's, so we're doing it. Yankee Stadium, high school. It's the same thing, it's different level. Moisture management and conditioners. So I see I have a few questions, so I'll get them. I'll leave my contact info up here. Email me. As you can tell, I love to talk. I might not know everything or be able to answer your question properly, but I will be able to, help guide you in the right direction. So what would you do differently to make sure the wind doesn't blow? Windscreens, if that's a serious question, you put windscreens around your field, that'll around the fencing, that'll allow it to die down a little bit, but I can't imagine that's a real question. Wetting agents work on skin areas. I don't have experience with that, but I would imagine that your wetting agent's going to hold it and not release it, and that's part of the reason why you don't want to use drying agents. Each company has a drying agent, which is basically conditioner crushed up. You normally have to take those off. You don't want to use drying agents. Conditioners will get you the same result. If you have a puddle, use conditioner, because then you can distribute it. It's going to release it over the course of time. Wetting agents, drying agents are not going to release that. But no, I don't think that wetting agents is the way to go for infield skins areas. Do you use Mr. Thirsty Mates or hand pumps for puddles? I would use hand pumps. What I've used in the past is I would dig out an area, the lowest point of that area, and pump it out. I would never want to move that dirt to my edges. You want that transition to be as good as possible. Hand pump it out. I would use a blower to kind of distribute it out over. You don't want to use a roller to because that's only going to create a dip in that area, and you're going to have to fix it anyway. Try to get your hands on some conditioners. If you have a puddle, that's going to tell you, okay, that's a low spot, I need to fix that. So on a drier day, or after that water has kind of washed, dried through, then I would use that's the time where I would add some infill mix and try to level that out. how do you keep dogs from pooping on the field? Lock the gates as best you can if it's a wide open field. You know, that you just got to stay on top of it. Try to communicate, put signs out there. Again, I know that some of these things are not easily attainable. Speak with people who use the field predominantly, whether it's a little league or a men's league, and try to talk to them and try to get their name out there. Maybe they have social media where they can say, hey, we use this field. Please don't let your dogs poop on it. If it's in the middle of a park, it's going to be tough, I guess. Again, I'm not so sure that that's a serious question, but if it is, try to utilize that. I manage a diamond in a very wet, cold climate, Ireland. We have no irrigation and no access to premix conditioner mixes. What is the ideal sand clay mix? Very wet, cold climate. I'm going to say again that infield mix that's got 75% sand, 15% clay, and 10% silt is what you would really want in that area, because it's gonna allow that water to kind of wash through. You do not want a higher clay content. You don't want that 20, 25, 30% range, because it's going to consistently stay wet and kind of mushy. So you'd want to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 75, 80% even. It's going to be on the looser side, but you're able to tighten that up with you roll it. You'll be able to tighten that up before before you get a really good rainstorm. Does it snow where you live? We've had great snow off fields for play. We had to get snow off fields for play. Would you recommend snow blowing or shoveling or even a weed burner? It does snow where we live, but however, we do, we don't, utilize the field past November. We don't, very rarely have we've had, snow in November. We do play in March. We basically play inside. We start in March. If we have snow, it'll melt. What I've seen used in the past is one of those brushes from there's like electronic brushes, or there's gas powered brushes you would use on a synthetic turf. That'll help get some of that snow off of it. Ideally, you'd want to try to stay off of it when there's snow, because it's going to be very, very wet underneath. Weed burner, you can get that top layer off, but you don't want to utilize that as you get closer to if you get an infield mix, it's not going to hurt it, but you don't want to get it to the grass area. Snow blowing might work. You have those big snow blowers, but again, you want to leave that up a little bit, especially on your grass. But wherever you're going to throw it, it's not really going to utilize it. So try to keep them off. I know that's easier said than done. Open or closed boxes. I'm not exactly sure what you mean. If you mean for the infield mix, with the float, it's a box, closed box. It's a 3x3 piece of wood that's squared, and that'll help level it off. Or you have a box in the back of your infield machine that's closed box that you can adjust up and down. Is it possible to get an electronic copy of the slideshow? I'm not 100% sure. SFMA, I'm doing a talk with this in January out in Utah, so feel free to come out to that. I know it's on I know it might be tough. Reach out to me. I can give you some of the things that you're more interested in, and I'll speak to Kristen at the end to see if that this is possible. We do use puddle pillows. The first time I ever used them this year. They do work. They do work actually, and you can squeeze them off to the side, let them dry out to the sun. But yeah, puddle pillows absolutely do work. Yeah, we use it in our grass because our drainage at our field is not the greatest. Best weed killer for infields, and how often do you put an infield mix on the field? I usually put infield mix in the fall. I try to keep it, do it in the fall. But if you're year round, prior to the main playing season, during the playing season, you're really not going to be able to do that for major renovation. So after the main playing season or before the main playing season is where you want to use it. Weed killer, if you're limited to school IPM or you can't use weed killers, it's best to do it by hand. If you are able to, I use a weed killer with 2 kinds of pre-emergent, and that kind of keeps it away. You want to use something that's got prodiamine in it or azoxaban, which basically is your pre-emergent for your grassy weeds and your broadleaf weeds. And you can use anything that's got, glyphosate or diquat in it or something like that. That'll be the best way. But definitely use this weed killer with a pre-emergent, because then you're going to reduce the amount that it's going to come back. What options would you recommend for pre-emergence on skin? The same thing. If you can use a liquid pre-emergent with something that's got isoxaban in it, or prodiamine, or something that nature, or something that's going to have it's a kill-all. I don't know what the trade name is, but there used to be a product called Sahara. Now, something to that name, where it'll kill everything it's got until a ground clearance. I think that would be one, but pre-emergence would be best in my opinion. Is there a specific type of sand you would want to use? Not necessarily. If you go to your local sand and gravel pit, they might have like a USGA sand that might be overpaying for it. A Mason sand that might be a little loose. So anything that you can utilize where you can put a little bit of sand on your surface, you want to rototill that in. You just don't want to leave that at the top. So you lay it out there. If you have an ability to top dress it, well, top dress it at the top, rototill it in, and that'll work itself in. But you definitely want to use enough. You want to make sure you're using, depending on how much you want to put in, 10, 20, 25 tons is about average. You don't want to go more than that. I top dress my fields as far as the grass areas with about 25 tons. I'd love to do more, but I can't afford it. So, utilize it, as needed. You can always add. And then, you can do it from there. But sand, basically what's your disposal. USGA fairway sand is probably really good. Is very good. I'm not, probably, but is very good. Mason sand might be a little bit too loose. So USGA fairway would be the best, I think. Am I from New York? I am not from New York. I'm from New Jersey, about an hour and a half from New York. So I'm not too far. What options would you recommend for pre-emergence on skin? I believe that I answered that. Live up here in Vermont, and we have a big problem with water in the spring with snow melting. What would be good conditioners to use to help? Infield skin conditioners, basically calcium clay. Anything that has calcium clay will be the calcined, I think it's called. There's expanded shale of people, I think, that use it. Again, that's going to get the water off, but it's going to hold the water longer. There's a bunch of different companies that have it. So just look for Infield conditioners. I use a specific one that I've used my entire career, but a lot of companies are good with that. But so the snow melting is very, very tough. I hear you. The snow melt off is very tough in the Northeast. But yeah, conditioners were going to be your best way to combat that. Any safe herbicide recommendations for sedge and broadleaf weeds that pop up, or do they need to be manually removed? Southeastern Texas. Safe herbicides, look, herbicides are inherently going to have that caution thing with it. There is a product that's going to have your carfentrazone in it. Any project that's going to have carfentrazone is going to be very good for your sedges. There's a product that has quinclorac and sulfentrazone that I use to treat nutsedge and green kalinga. Green kalinga is very predominant in our area here. Nutsedge, but carfentrazone, anything that has carfentrazone on it will really get your sedge. Broadleaf weeds, anything that quinclorac will treat your broadleaf weeds, but not as quickly as something that might have like dicamba in it. So you can combine two products. So you can combine a product that's got, or dismiss, I don't want to say dismiss, some product that might have, dicamba and carfentrazone, or 2,4-D and carfentrazone. That'll be able to combat that. If you combine those two products, they'll be able to do your broadleaf weeds in your sedge. What is your opinion on a paradigm shift for Major League switching from 0.3% crowns to flat plain diamonds? They can do it. They can do it because they control the amount of moisture that goes on the field. If they want to, they can tarp it. If they, they can keep it flat. I think a lot of Major League teams are going to this very high-end infield mix that's very, very good at, where the infield mix is not moving, so they can stay flat. So the very common back in the day type stuff is there, that 3% crown coming from the mound and going, expanding out towards the outfield, towards the sidelines, because that's where you wanted everything to shed. But with everything now, with the root zones, the root zones of the crushed stone, the white pebble stone, the drainage that they're all putting in here, plus that flat plane diamonds, they have to do that because they're becoming multiple use soccer fields, football fields. So it's really the multiple use side of it. I think that's where you're getting that, because if you look at baseball fields now, minor league stadiums, major league stadiums, Yankee Stadium goes from left field to right field. Chicago Cubs goes from center field to home plate, to do, say they're doing soccer. A lot of minor league teams are doing that. So, not going to have those. If you're going to get those professional teams on there, they want a field to play a certain way. So a flat plane diamond will make sense for them, but they can control the moisture that goes on it. So we don't have that ability. What are the 5 tools, machines that any field manager should have to manage a city ball field? I would say a infield machine would be number 1, a roller, number 2, some kind of a toe behind, rototiller would be 3, and a good mower would be 4, and shoot, I guess, a good rake, a good infield machine with attachments that have, a float on it, an area, not a float on it, like a box drag, a drag mat, something that can open it up, that'll solve you a lot. Having those tools on that machine will make it very, very helpful for you, and very quickly, because you can open up the field, get the mounds done, go back and drag it all with an infield machine or anything like that. A roller goes a long way, but if you have a tractor, same thing. A roller is quicker, but a tractor, since it's got its weight evenly distributed over 4 tires, you can roll it and firm it up that way. That's the best way before a big rain, to make sure that it's going to roll off and the rain was going to push off. So those type of tools will be the best way for it. If we're overseeding with perennial rye, would pre-emergent prevent stray seeds from growing in skinned areas? Sure. I mean, it's not going to be perfect. But yeah, I mean, if you put your pre-emergent spray down, but see, the problem is that, pre-emergents are going to create that barrier on top. If you're using a machine to install the soil, install the seed, it's going to disturb that layer that creates that barrier, where, your pre-emergents are going. So liquid, it's going to be like this. And if you put a machine down and poke a hole, put the seed in, well, guess what? You're going to break that barrier, and it's going to allow that seed to come up. So it's possible, but more than likely, if you're mechanically putting the seed in the ground, it's gonna grow either way. It's just one of those things that we just have to deal with. You like painting or chalking lines for infield skin? What's your take on choosing what style? I love painting it. Chalking is a pain in the butt. Over time, it creates a mess, and over time it creates like a little, every time you chalk and you don't pick it up, it gets higher, 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 and then if you choose to chalk it, then you scoop it out. You have to scoop it, but I understand that if you don't have the ability to wet the infield, where you paint, it becomes difficult. So if you have the ability to use a backpack sprayer and spray where you're going to paint, lay that line out, spray it as you paint it, it'll come out really good. Batter's box, sidelines, things of that nature. But I understand if it's very dry and you can't see it, well, you can use chalk, but you would for it to not become a pain in the butt, you would have to pick it up after every game. So I prefer painting it. If you have a paint machine, you can't use one that you use on the grass because it's got too much power. If you have one where you can turn the dial down, it's still not great because it's going to blow the conditioner out. It's going to blow the infield mix off the top. But so I would use the spray can aerosol. That would be best. So yeah, I mean, feel free to contact me. I'll answer any questions. Again, I'm going to do an expanded talk out in Utah in January. So I'd love to see the room filled, and I'll answer more questions and give more advice. So thank you for everybody jumping on, and feel free to reach out to me with any questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Keith, and thank you all for joining us today. As Keith said, this presentation will be featured at SFMA's annual conference, so make sure you come prepared with questions. We hope to see you in Salt Lake City. Make sure to register. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.